Well, this is what you guys voted for, so here it is. The Enhancement Shaman to Keystone Hero, which is going to be a little weird this season because a lot of things have changed. Let's get into it. Just like every other challenge, we're going to do this completely solo. No help from friends, guildies, or community members. This will be 100% pug life, baby. First things first, I need to make sure my Raider IO profile isn't connected to any of my other characters. Otherwise, it could make life slightly easier getting into keys. I need to leave my beloved Loot Goblins guild, because spoilers, you know. I then need to make sure I have clean bags for all of the loot I'm not gonna get. As for the build, I've chosen the go-to spec for Mythic Plus taken from Wowhead. This is the Elementalist build that focuses more on AoE. At least I think it does anyway. There are so many builds, it's rather confusing. Then we get into the rotation, and there's so many variables that go into this. It's basically a priority list, but there are so many spells and it's all very situational. Well, this one should be fun.
Yo bro. Do you have healing abilities?
Do I have healing abilities? I'm a shaman, so no. Maybe if I stand here really still and pretend I'm AFK, they'll move on and leave me alone. Alright, so this guy starts at an item level of... Dude, I'm trying to record here. What a butt face. We begin this challenge at 453 item level and obviously no score. There's been quite a few changes this season, and as a fresh character, there's a lot of content we can do to get gear. So as I queue up for the Time Walking Weekly, let's talk about the dungeons in Season 4, because it's a little different now. Firstly, Heroic Dungeon tune-in and rewards has been increased. These are basically the new Mythic Zeros. However, the Mythic Dungeon mechanics are not included. The new Mythic Zeros should now feel like a +10. I know, a little weird, right? +2s should feel like an 11, a +5 should feel like a 15, and a +10 is what used to be our glorious 20s. Portals at +10? Super weird. But what about the affixes? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. You get the first affix at +2, tyrannical or fortified. At +5, you get the second affix, and at +10, you get the third and final affix for the week. This means, looking at the loot table, you can do +8s to unlock the myth track for the vault without having a third affix. That's pretty bonkers if you think about it. I wasn't quite sure just how hard Mythic Zeros would be at the very beginning, nor did I feel comfortable on the Shaman to jump into anything like that just yet. So I set myself some goals for the week. Complete the Time Walking Weekly, which would offer me a champion item of 493. Then I needed to do the new Valdrakken Weekly. This involved doing the Community Feast, Dragonbane Keep, and the Hunt. Not only would I gain a cache from the weekly quest, but I would also obtain a cache from completing each of the 3 events. Oh, but it gets even better, because inside the 3 caches that you get from completing the old events, it also includes a cache of the storms. And in every single cache, there's a piece of gear. So once I've completed everything I set out to do, I'd have 8 caches to open. But wait, there's more. We also have the new Fated Raid system. Well, it's the same system we had in Shadowlands, but it's new to this expansion. Each week, we'll get a raid that becomes fated. By taking down one of the awakened bosses, you'll get a chance to loot an antique bronze bullion. You can loot one of these per week. These are used to obtain a piece of gear from a unique vendor, and the gear you can choose from this vendor is pretty much anything you want from any of the 3 raids. You can loot these at any difficulty, which is great for me because LFR was also on my list. Alright, that was a lot to cover and I apologise, but it's a new season and there's been a bunch of changes I felt like I needed to talk about. So expect some more in just a moment. I took down the world boss, which dropped me a cache and a cloak. I finished the Time Walking Dungeons. I then finished the Valdrakken Weekly. I cleared the entire raid on LFR. Obviously no loot, but I did get my bronze bullion. I did a few random heroic dungeons to get a feel for the rotation, and it didn't feel great, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then I decided to head over to our favourite place and open all of our caches. This was gonna be fun. We got 493 champion shoulders, we received a 457 explorer chest, a 480 veteran weapon, a 480 veteran trinket with intellect, that's helpful, 480 veteran legs, 480 veteran waist, and a 480 veteran helm. And lastly, from the Time Walking Weekly, we looted a 499 champion Ashes of the Ember Soul trinket. I spent the entire of Season 3 without this on my Rep Paladin. I get this week 1 on my Shaman. Awesome. Thanks. I'm pretty sure it's not good for enhancement either. This guy's going to be one of those characters. But well, when I said I stood there just to open the caches, well, there was another reason. It turns out I had a vault to open from Season 3. I played a few keys as Resto last season, but I didn't get much further than 1k score. However, because of the catch-up mechanics, I did acquire my 4 set. We opened the vault and looted a pretty bad weapon, purely for the transmog. With most things being an upgrade, this took our total item level up to 470. Not a bad start if you ask me. However, I couldn't equip everything just yet, as it would break my 4 set. This would be quite the damage loss. After all that, I stepped outside and decided it was time to queue up for some Mythic Zeros. Alright, second vault looted, terrible hands for transmog. Can we do some dungeons now? Yep, no third vault, thank God. That was embarrassing. With the dilly derps out of the way, it was finally time to see just how amazing I was playing enhancement. Spoiler alert, I'm awful. A slight exaggeration perhaps, it wasn't that bad. My first experience was Nelfaris, and although this was one of my favourites during Season 2, it's not quite the same as it once was. Chains can now only be used by one player, does pretty much 0 damage, and perhaps not worth using at all anymore, not to mention the chains on Chargath itself.
Nope.
Yep, still a buggy mess, just walked straight through my chain, 0 Fs given on that one. Overall, it wasn't terrible, but it was still incredibly challenging in terms of rotation, as I spent most of my time staring at my weak auras. This obviously impacted the way I was dealing with mechanics. The joys of playing something new. The hardest part for me was fitting all the spells onto comfortable keybinds. Like mentioned on previous challenge series, I've been playing with the same style of MMO mouse for 10 plus years. I've had my spells on similar buttons for pretty much all of that time. For example, I keep my interrupts and stuns on the same buttons. That way, if I jump onto a new character, it just feels natural to me. And the same thing goes for builders and spenders, although with some slight variation, but it's typically the same for the most part. The Affliction Warlock we played for last season's challenge was difficult fitting all the spells onto a keybind that felt right, but we did get there in the end. The Enhancement Shaman, however, it just feels weird and very clunky to play, I'll be honest. Hopefully, it gets better with time. I won't bore you with the rotation, but at first glance, I'm going to make a bold statement and compare it to an Arcane Mage. Very overwhelming and what looks to be one of the hardest specs to play, but it's meant to be a challenge, right? We've already covered these dungeons in previous challenges, so I won't talk too much about the encounters, but I will mention some of the changes I come across from time to time, like I did earlier when we talked about the chains. The next change, which was very noticeable, was the shield on the last boss. I'm pretty sure you needed 3 or 4 to break through it. Now, you only need 2. That felt really nice with the nerf to chains, which slowed the pacing quite a bit. This run was quite smooth other than the 3 wipes we had on Chargath, but we won't talk about those. We finished this place, gained some Drake crests, got our first keystone, and we picked up some braces. Unfortunately, I ran out of time for the day and had to prepare for stream, which you should totally check out by the way. You see, although the community voted for Enhancement Shaman for this season's challenge, quite a lot of you wanted to see me play the Feral Druid and Survival Hunter. So, I decided to play those too. I'll exclusively be playing all 3 as mains to begin with, and taking them all the way to 3k score. I'll then spend the rest of the season testing out each melee class, as there's so many I've never tried. I like to call this Project Melee. So if you want to see me play your favourite melee spec, or potentially join me for some Mythic Plus, be sure to follow me over on Twitch. I'll also be uploading some of the footage here on YouTube, so you may even feature. If that's not a good enough reason to sub to the channel, then I don't know what is. I woke up the next morning and decided to continue. I wasn't satisfied with my progress. You see, usually I limit these challenge characters to 1 day per week, but due to the time walkings and me being a dum-dum, I didn't know you could actually do the time walking raid and actually get some decent gear from it. Along with this, it had a quest that rewards you with yet another cache. There's so many! I smashed my way through, we took Illidan down, and I opened my cache. This gave me a 506 Hero Helm. Holy moly. The only issue being that I can't actually use it just yet as it breaks my 4 set, and that would result in a big DPS loss. Oh, and I looted 3 cloaks from that place and I already had one with decent stats, so I gave all of them away. Like, not 1, not 2, but 3. It could have gave me something else, but nah. After that, I decided to do some more Mythic Zeros. I started with one of my least favourites, Alderman, which is a shame because I'd really like the weapon from here. There wasn't any noticeable change coming back to this place, but I am struggling to remember all of the little details in these dungeons. For example, which dwarf am I meant to focus for interrupts? Or which spell should I line of sight? Yeah, my memory's pretty terrible. We cleared this place, leaving with a new ring and a chess piece. I'm super sad about having to farm this place for the weapon though. An alternative to that would be Ruby Life Pools, the next place on my list. And yes, I chose these places first because of the weapons. Man, I've not missed this place, though maybe it'll be a lot better now that I have all of this Mythic Plus experience behind me. Again, not much to say about this place either, other than the fact that this has been bugged since the beginning of the expansion. Maybe it's intended. We finished this place trading another damn cloak to someone, and I wanted one more dungeon before calling it for the day. And that place was Algafor Academy. Now, I really like this place, but do you all want to know a little secret? You sure? Alright, fine, but don't tell anyone, because I'll be forced to do it on stream, and I've had enough of doing orbs for one expansion. So, what if I told you I went through the entirety of Season 1 without ever touching one of those orbs on the bird boss? I say bird boss because I can't actually pronounce the name. Is it Croft? It's a bird, okay? Well, this season won't be any different. I honestly never fully understood it all. And going into Season 4, I've not actually gone over the tactics again to understand it now. I'm just winging it so far, and letting everyone else take care of it, of course. Alright, so far we've not talked about the damage output or the rest of the group. We're currently in a really weird spot where the season is fresh, and most players that I've joined are at least 475, some 480 to nearly 500. It seemed possible to compete with some of these guys, especially Serum Paloofy Goofy. Yeah, this guy was above 490 with the legendary, so I shouldn't even be trying to compare my damage to that. But in terms of how I feel about enhancements so far, it's not easy, I can tell you that much. But then, I've only been playing for 2 days now, so I'm actually pretty happy with where my damage is, to be honest. It's fun, but it's really tough getting used to the rotation. I have moments where my brain just stops and I have no idea which button to press. But by far the scariest thing about playing the Shaman is that I will be relied on for using Bloodlust. I'm yet to fat finger this, but I'm sure it will happen one day. Oh boy. We finish this place and I leave with a new ring. Well, maybe 2 actually, because the Rep Paladin certainly tore me a new one. We end today with an item level of 475, and sadly our score still sits at 0. Though to be fair, Blizzard did state that Mythic Zeros should now feel like +10s, so I mean, I was doing +10s, right? If you're interested in seeing where I started my Mythic Plus journey, you can check out Season 1's Blood DK to KSM. You can also check out Season 2's Mistweaver Monk to KSM, or you could watch my most recent adventure where I took the Affliction Warlock all the way to Keystone Hero. I've played some rather interesting specs.